heard is just a reimagined version of all the bands I was listening to 5 years ago. And all the bands I was listening to 5 years ago are just heavily influenced versions of all the bands we all heard on UK radio 20 years ago when we were young. And all of that was just a well-branded, much-needed revival. A much-needed revival of all the bands I'd heard bits of back then, mainly from my father, but I hadn't properly discovered those yet. And all those bands are the best. All those bands are the best, particularly from around 77 to 82. I've been collecting those records in my mid to late 20s and listening intently with great interest. I've just turned 30 and I've realised those bands from 20 years ago that I didn't fully explore back then are actually really cool. That they owe a large amount of credit to Gang of Four's debut album Entertainment. I've just turned 30 and finally I've realised after doing this for 15 years now, there's no such thing as original. No such thing as truly original. I used to think, why bother if it's all been done before, what's the point at all? But I've slowly come to terms with what I just said, and that's liberating. If it feels good, I should do it. So really this whole thing you're hearing right now is me making a track after listening to all those aforementioned bands, and more recently exploring DFA's output, particularly Liquid Christmas Display's first 2 albums. If you know, you know.
Cycles, around and around these 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 cycles, around and around.
Either. No one cares in the grand scheme of things. The kids just want to dance as I stand at the side wearing perfume. I think I've started to find myself losing my edge. Settled down in this house of jealous lovers. I felt it all over the last few years. I've been it all, seen it all. Damaged goods, a